citation at Crimson Skyhawk, 70 Papa Roger. Break citation 523 Mike Bravo, runway 20 right, taxi via Alpha Lima Hold short, runway 20 left.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another video for Alex's Flying Club. I'm in the A2A Simulations Aircraft Factory F4U Corsair, and I'm on the ATC network PilotEdge. That's why you're hearing some of the ATC communication going on in the background, and I'll talk over some of it in the beginning until I start communicating with the ATC myself, just so I can give a little background on this aircraft and PilotEdge in general. So this is with the Aircraft Factory line of A2A's aircraft, and the Corsair is not as modeled in detail as some other AccuSim aircraft like that P-51, the Cessna 172, and the newer 182, but it's still pretty good. In fact, I think this is probably the most realistic simulation of the Corsair out there on any simulator that I've seen. And if anybody contests that claim, I would be more than willing to try out a different one that is more accurate and more realistic, because I looked long and hard, and this is about as good as it gets until somebody like Digital Combat Simulations or A2A itself releases a new version of the Corsair with AccuSim. But here I'm running through the startup procedure, and I turn the battery on, turn the fuel pump on, and resolve some of those cowl flaps, oil, intercooler flaps, etc. I'm going to prime the engine for a couple shots. I've already released a drop tank on this. When you spawn in, it automatically places a drop tank for you.
Mike Bravo, John Wayne Tower. Good afternoon.
I'm not going to be using that today. I'm going to hit the starter right now.
Cessna departing from Kilo. Legacy 552 Lima Ontario Tower. Enter left base, runway 26 left.
Alright, so I wanted you to hear the sounds on this aircraft. I am using additional sounds which I downloaded freeware, and I'll have the name of the company that produces these sounds and the link below. But I wanted you to hear how the engine start sounds. The default one sounds pretty good too, the one that comes with the Aircraft Factory Corsair, but I do like this one that I got. I'm also using a cockpit mod. It darkens up the dashboard. The cockpit mod also adds that little photograph of a woman and adds shadows around the aircraft that were hand-drawn by the author. It makes it look a little less stylized, a little less cartoonish, which the stock aircraft tends to look like. And if you're hearing scrambling around and squealing noises in the background, those are my guinea pigs who have decided to start romping around their cage right as I'm recording. Alright, so pretty soon I'm going to be making my call to ATC, but first I'm going to check the weather at John Wayne Airport. This is the PilotEdge ATC network, so we're flying in the SoCal area. That's the coverage area, SoCal and parts of Northern California as well. And PilotEdge is a paid service. It's kind of like VATSIM, if you're familiar with VATSIM. But you have to pay, but they guarantee the coverage, and the coverage area is limited to those parts of California. But it's really nice because I've flown on VATSIM, and sometimes you're hard pressed to find controllers. But here, all the airspaces and all the towers and ground controllers are staffed. They may be staffed by 2 or 3 people covering the whole area, but you're still switching frequencies just like you would be in real life. So, just doing my final preparations here, and I'll try to make sure I stay quiet for my call out. I'm of course recording this narration after the fact, after this flight.
Legacy 555, Legacy 552 Lima, make left close traffic.
I also added the navigation controls. This was my own modification. I added the HSI heading indicator, the VOR indicator, and the ADF radios, which you see in the pop-up panel to the bottom, below left of the radio panel. So yeah, I think I'm using just those 3 mods: the sounds, the cockpit upgrade, and the my own addition of the navigational instruments. County clearance, Corsair 85 Alpha Lima is requesting VFR close traffic. We have the information on what 5 Alpha Lima.
Like I say, 5-2 Lima, wind column right, 26 left, clear for the option.
So that was me just calling previously to get clearance.
Corsair 5 Alpha Lima, if you're staying in the pattern, you can just contact ground.
Over to ground, 5 Alpha Lima. So the nice thing about PilotEdge is the controllers are very knowledgeable, and there he just kind of gave me a tip saying, you know,
Corvallis,
I should just go straight to the
Hotel,
ground
tower. Fly straight out, runway.
And PilotEdge is really aimed toward people that want to get a real-world experience and get comfortable communicating just like pilots do in the real ATC airspace. Gentleman ground, Corsair 85 Alpha Lima is requesting VFR close traffic. We have information, Foxtrot, and we are south of the executive hangars.
Corsair 5 Alpha Lima, John Wayne ground, runway 20 left at Kilo, taxi via Alpha Hotel, Charlie Kilo.
20 left at Kilo, taxi by Alpha Hotel, Charlie Kilo for 5 Alpha Lima. Okay, so I skipped ahead a little bit. I did a pushback for this aircraft, and as you'll see, I don't have a lot of experience in this aircraft, and the takeoff was very amateur at best. If I had damage on, it would probably have resulted in a crash. But this aircraft is a real challenge to fly, and it's an enjoyable challenge. Even without any flight model tweaks, there's actually an alternate flight model for this aircraft. It's also freeware, which I tried downloading, but it kind of messed some things up. It was really recommended on the Sim Outhouse forums, but it just didn't work well for me. The aircraft dimensions, I think, were different. Yeah, so I'm just using the standard flight model, but I am thinking of getting A2A's AccuFeel for this aircraft, which is really supposed to enhance the experience, because it adds a lot of things like the rumble when you're taxiing. It makes the aircraft harder to land because the ground physics are modeled better, and you also have like sound effects before a stall or if you're in a high-speed dive.
Cessna Alpha Foxtrot Mike, runway 20 left, clear for the option.
And I'll show some parts in this video that I'm recording, because specifically I want to compare how the sound and how the feel will be different once I get AccuFeel for this aircraft. So this is kind of like a baseline for me. I'm going to do some high-speed dives later on, or one high-speed dive later on in this video, and you'll see it's hard to tell that the aircraft is moving at 400 knots rather than 200 knots. But AccuFeel is supposed to kind of give you more of that sense.
Cessna Alpha Foxtrot Mike, make left close traffic.
Left
close
to traffic.
I'm mousing over the rudder and aileron trims there, but I actually forgot to set my elevator trim, which is going to be the cause of a really sloppy takeoff, as you'll see. Conway Tower, Corsair 5 Alpha Lima is ready for takeoff. Runway 20 left at kilo.
Corsair 85 Alpha Lima, Conway Tower, runway 20 left at kilo, line up and wait. Traffic a Cessna on the upwind.
Line up and wait, 20 left, 5 Alpha Lima.
Conway Tower, Cessna 70 Papa, just for clarification, the aircraft in front of us, what type is he?
Cessna 70 Papa, you're following a Cessna Skyhawk. He is on downwind about just ahead and to your left.
Following the Skyhawk, thanks, 70 Papa.
Corsair 85 Alpha, wind 260 at 4, runway 20 left at kilo, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 20 left, Corsair 5 Alpha Lima.
Corsair 5 Alpha Lima, make close traffic, runway 20 left at kilo, clear for takeoff.
Close traffic, 20 left, 5 Alpha Lima, clear for takeoff. So I'm not going to go over in detail about what all that communication means. Just I'm going to mention that close traffic means I'm going to do touch and go before I depart the traffic pattern.
Mike, runway 20 left, cleared for the option.
I wanted to get a little bit of landing practice, and
26 left, clear for the option. That's going to be full stop.
Once I tried it here for the first time,
runway 26 left,
I decided to
20 left, clear to land.
leave the airspace and do my landing practices in an uncontrolled field, just because I need more experience with this aircraft. So what happened there was my elevator trim was set too high from the previous flight. I keep saving this aircraft after each flight, so it's kind of like a continuous, persistent aircraft in a way. And my elevator trim was set too high from the previous landing, and I didn't reset it. So that's something I'll remember to do next time. But what happened was the aircraft pulled up way too fast and stalled right on takeoff.
Cessna 70 Papa, number 2, following the Cessna turning base, runway 20 left, clear for the option.
For the option, runway 20 left, and we'll try to put more spacing between us, 70 Papa.
I have the canopy open right now, and you can't tell that there's wind passing right through into the cockpit.
Vegas Tower, wind calm, runway 19 left, clear to land.
And I mean, I think that's common with most stock aircraft. And hopefully AccuFeel will fix that type of experience. Man, my guinea pigs are really
change runways, 19 right.
Really chasing each other in the cage. I don't know if you're hearing all that racket. I may have to stop it in case stop this video for a second in case they start fighting. And they seem to be doing okay now. So as you can see, I'm changing the heading bug on the actual VC cockpit, and then it changes it in the panel. So it's like a duplicate. It's like
Corsair,
a duplicate heading
Alpha
indicator.
Lima, wind 260 at 4, number 3, following a Cessna turning base. Runway 20 left, cleared for the option.
Clear for the option, 20 left, following the Cessna base, 5 Alpha Lima. So PilotEdge is really great. I've been flying pretty much for the entire month of November, December on PilotEdge exclusively, and it's great to be with other pilots and to be talking to controllers. It really adds to the feeling of immersion, and it's well worth my $20 a month at this point, I think, for the entertainment and educational factor.
John Tower, Bravo Alpha Foxtrot Mike after landing at Juliet on the left side. Request taxi.
Cessna Golf Bravo Alpha Foxtrot Mike.
If you think about it, it's like going to 2 movies a month.
It's
the same cost, but I get a lot more entertainment value from flying on PilotEdge.
It doesn't matter for me to get some parking. Foxtrot Mike.
Cessna Golf Bravo Alpha Foxtrot Mike, taxi to the southeast ramp via Charlie Hotel.
So the approach isn't that bad. I think what I keep trying to do on these landings is, well, first of all, I don't think I looked up far enough over the engine to give me a good view. Second of all, I get close to the runway, and instead of dropping my speed with a throttle, dropping my altitude with using throttle, I try to nose the Corsair down, and at low speeds when you nose it down,
Maintain VFR.
It reacts really
2400,
really heavily,
127.2,
really violently
squawk 2327.
to those inputs. And so what results is either a large bounce, or if you pull back up on the stick, you float in the air and may stall. So this aircraft is really tricky to land, and it's a real challenge if you like warbirds, if you like piston planes. It's
Cessna 5 Delta Lima, reback.
it's really tricky to land, and it's actually going to most likely be even harder with AccuFeel. Because if you've flown AccuSim type aircraft like the Cessna 172 by A2A, those aircraft are really hard to land. They are, yeah, you can see I'm having a hard time there. But those aircraft are really hard to land because they model the ground physics really well, and in general, non-AccuSim aircraft, just like default aircraft in FSX, are a lot easier to land because they're a lot more forgiving.
Corsair 5F Lima, request VFR departure to the west.
Corsair 5 Alpha Lima, turn right heading at 330, maintain VFR out below 2400.
Turning right 330 will maintain below 2400, 5F Lima.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to head out over the water. I'm going to head west of Los Angeles, and I skipped ahead. I did follow his instructions, the air traffic controller, and I did stay below 2400, but then I left his airspace and started climbing above the clouds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter a warning area, as the airspace terminology goes, and those areas are where general aviation aircraft are allowed to fly, but there may be like military activity going on there. So I figured it's a good place to try out some maneuvers with the Corsair. And I'm just going to start by doing some basic stuff because, like I said, I've hardly flown this A2A Corsair, and I'm still very green with it. So I'm going to practice some turns, then I'm going to do a dive, I'm going to practice some slow flight, and then I'm going to head back to an untowered airport while still on the PilotEdge network, and I'm going to do some practice touch and goes and then finally land. Excuse me. So that's what the rest of the video holds. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the Corsair and some of the modifications to it and some of its characteristics. I'm by no means an expert, but I have flown the Corsair a bit in Aces High with a squadron and virtual squadron, and
5 Delta Lima, contact Ontario Tower 120.6.
yeah, this is one of my all-time favorite aircraft. So now I have the canopy closed, since we're flying at a higher altitude, at a higher speed.
So
But I
770
think
contact.
the manual allows you to keep the canopy open. The pilot's handbook suggests you can keep it open at, I think, up to 300 knots. At one place I read 200, and in another part I read 300. But that must be some experience, just going 250 knots in this aircraft with the canopy open, and the wind just
773. I'm just
rushing
curious
into
now,
your face.
say your speed.
That'd be pretty extreme. So
You
now I'm
said
decreasing
you were showing
speed.
like,
I'm going to do some slow flight maneuvers,
about 250
and
inches
I'm going to drop the gear, drop the flaps, and pretty much the goal of slow flight is to really get acquainted with the aircraft's limitations,
XL 770,
because turns are a lot
speed,
harder,
wing
and just any kind of maneuver is harder when you're in slow flight. You're pretty much trying to fly at the lowest speed possible without stalling the aircraft, and that's why you drop the flaps, drop the gear, is to help you get extra lift with such low speeds. Because the slower the aircraft goes, the less wind coming over your wings and the less lift is generated by the wings themselves. So on PilotEdge, you'll see a lot of general aviation aircraft and jets You don't see as many warbirds, but you can fly with warbirds on PilotEdge as long as you're following all the air traffic control rules and not going above 250 knots while VFR, maintaining the proper VFR altitudes, and following air traffic control instructions when you're flying on instrument rules. You can fly pretty much any plane that you want, and yeah, this is definitely fun. There's a lot of things you can do with the Corsair and aircraft like it on PilotEdge, but it takes more patience, and it's more of a airmanship challenge rather than you know, dogfighting or blowing things up.
Air 5 Bravo Mike, direct delaying, join departure.
So you see, I'm having a very hard time with slow flight. I'll actually end up trying to do some turns at a higher speed, but this is something that
Air 5 Bravo Mike, traffic
is
2 to 3 o'clock.
is a good challenge.
2 miles northwestbound, converging altitude.
It's maintain altitude, maintain speed in a turn, while flying at the minimum speed possible for slow flight. Right now I'm at about 100 knots. And I skipped ahead a little bit, so I've gained more speed. I've raised my flaps, raised my gear, and I'm going to try to do some regular turns. This aircraft turns easier to the right than to the left, and that's because of the torque effect of the propeller. The propeller on a Corsair spins to the right, and when you're turning left, you're pretty much fighting the natural torque of the propeller. And when you're turning right, you're going with the torque, and it makes it easier to turn. Actually, I don't think I recorded the regular turns, just did those on my own. But I am going to record this high-speed dive, because I wanted to see how the Corsair performs under these conditions. Just listen to the sound as the aircraft dives.
So 773, roger, contact Los Angeles Center 119.95.
So I probably got to about, over 400 knots, almost 450 knots at the bottom of the dive. And
So
did you hear any difference in the sound of the aircraft as it gained speed?
Trixie at maintain 12000,
I didn't really either. And this is something I'm interested in comparing to AccuFeel
16.
if I ever do get that piece of software, because AccuFeel should create some dynamic sound effects as you're diving. You know, the aircraft should start rattling a little bit. You should feel the wind passing through the airframe. But as it stands, the stock version, it doesn't really model that. And again, I am using a different sound package. Maybe the stock one would have slightly different effects, but I don't remember it having it. So, yeah, this is just an interesting experiment to construct, to do. I've skipped ahead a little bit in this video. I was just flying back to the coast of California. Right now I'm on autopilot in heading mode. You can also do autopilot nav mode, and the autopilot panel does come with the stock aircraft, but again, these navigational panels that I'm adjusting right now, I'm tuning into the VOR frequency. And I turned to autopilot on nav mode. Those navigational ones I added myself, and I really don't have any kind of instructions how I did that. I used these navigation gauges from a freeware DC3 that I found on DC3airways.com. I'll link to that, and I'll also link in the comments in the description of the video to just a general forum post that I found helpful, where people were discussing how to add gauges into a different type of aircraft, the Cessna 185. But the same principles apply. You have to edit the panel.cfg file and just use gauges from another aircraft, and then kind of size them in a way and group them in a way that you want to create one panel. Sorry I don't have instructions for that, but if you really want to figure it out, I'll provide you some resources in the description of the video.
Station Air 416 Juliet Kilo.
The GPS panel also comes with the aircraft, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this non-towered airport called French Valley, and that's one that I frequently like to go to if I want to practice some things on PilotEdge, but not necessarily be talking to ATC. And the reason it's a nice airport is because it's got a really long runway. A lot of non-towered fields are smaller, but this one's quite large, and you can practice flying the pattern, touch and go landings, etc. And there's usually not a lot of aircraft around, except for PilotEdge drones, which are just AI aircraft flying around. And yeah, it's a nice place to practice. One of my favorite fields in SoCal. This skin of the aircraft, this livery, is the Lonesome Polecat livery of Squadron VF-17. And this is a freeware repaint, and you guessed it, I'll have the link to that one below. The reason why I like to include links to all the things that I mention is if I see something on YouTube from another video from another channel, and I like it, I'm like, oh, that's a cool repaint, or oh, that's a cool mod. And I always think it's nice when the authors include links so that you can find that easily. Because when they don't, it just, if you really want to try it out, it's a lot of research sometimes to find exactly what they're using to achieve that effect in the flight simulator. So I skipped ahead again, and now we're above French Valley. You'll still hear ATC because I'm tuned into the approach frequency, but I will do some air traffic communications in the non-towered area, and that's pretty much just an advisory frequency, 122.8 or 122.7 in this field. I don't remember which, and it lets any human pilots know in the area what your intentions are. But since it was mostly drones in the area, sometimes I didn't even do the comms. Skipped ahead. I had done some touch and go practice landings, which I didn't show, which I didn't record, and now I'm going to show one that I did record. I have my canopy open. I'm lined up on the approach. It's going to be a fairly long approach. It was a long final. I wanted to set up nicely, and here you'll see a really good demonstration of what I meant when I was saying that if you try to lose altitude by nudging the stick forward right at the edge of the runway, it's not a good way to go. When the Corsair is really slow and on landing, at least this model, you have to be really gentle with the stick movements, and next time I'm flying this thing, I'm gonna really practice using the throttle to control the vertical speed of the aircraft. Now, carrier landings are going to be another thing entirely with this. That'll be an even greater challenge. It should be pretty fun. But I'm not there yet. So here the approach is good, but now I'm going to try to feed in the stick input right there. And it's going to start descending way too fast. I'm going to bounce. It's more like a flop and go rather than a touch and go. But I still think it was a better attempt than my first one. Since my last video, I was playing a lot with X-Plane and watching videos of people flying on X-Plane. And I was even thinking of purchasing X-Plane for myself. It's a great simulator. It models flight, the actual dynamics of the propeller and the wind moving through the airframe better than FSX, because it uses blade theory rather than FSX is just like kind of estimations of what an aircraft should be doing. But and one of the other reasons why I wanted to switch to X-Plane was FSX kept crashing on me all the time. But I found this great fix for FSX if you're using it on Windows 8, and it's pretty much just like including a simple file that is not there for some reason, and FSX pretty much has stopped crashing on me. It used to crash like almost every other flight, and I couldn't do things like once my aircraft was loaded up, I couldn't like change the fuel settings. I couldn't change the weather because it would crash. And then I found this fix, and it is just awesome. It had my FSX hasn't crashed since I did the fix, so I'll include the link for that. And yeah, I mean, I'm not running any heavy add-ons. I don't have like weather or texture add-ons. I know FSX crashes for those reasons too, when you run out of memory. So that's not the problem I'm having. But at least I fixed whatever issues I was having on my system.
French early traffic, Corsair 5 Alpha Lima training, final to land, runway 18, Frenchville.
So I called out this landing on the advisory frequency because I saw that Skyhawk up ahead, but I'm pretty sure it's a drone. Just judging by the call sign, which I checked. So this will be my final full stop landing, and after this I'm going to park and shut down the aircraft. Let's see how I do this time. Well, at least it stayed on the runway. I love that sound of the engine at low RPMs. That like kicking sound of the cylinders. I think this additional sound pack really adds a nice detail there. Taxiing, of course, is notoriously difficult in the Corsair because the view ahead is obstructed. You gotta also remember to unlock the tail wheel before you exit the runway. I've got that mapped to a key, which is very convenient. I'd recommend that if you're flying any tail dragger aircraft with a tail wheel lock. Gonna clean up the aircraft, leaned out the mixture to avoid following the plugs, which I learned from the Cessna. I don't know if it applies to this aircraft, but I did it anyway. Lowered the RPM. Open the cowl flaps. I'm taxiing to a parking spot, and I'm going to save this aircraft once I park it, and the next flight that I'm going to do, I don't know if I'm going to record the next flight, but the next flight that I'm going to do with this aircraft, I'll just start it through here. I'm going to change the date and time to whatever is current, change the weather to whatever is current, give it some fuel. Kind of sort of like an AccuSim type, like a pretend AccuSim, because AccuSim actually saves all that stuff for you, saves all the aircraft states for you for your next flight, and models the engine. And another thing I want to eventually in the future try is the Real Engine 1.4 mod, and that also adds more realism to like an aircraft like this, which doesn't have AccuSim. It pretty much models the damage that you can do to an aircraft if you're not treating the engine right. But it does require some manual setting up, which I'm not really in the mood to research all that just yet. But it's a cool little mod. So I'm going to run through the shutdown procedure. Cut off the mixture for the engine. I'm going to reset trims, which I didn't do before this flight, and raise the wings, turned off the ignition switch. I forgot to record turning off the fuel selector. Right now it's on reserve tank. I just off the camera, I'll put it onto off. And there's really no way to check how much fuel is remaining in each individual tank. There's like a fuel gauge for total fuel remaining, but there's no fuel selector where you can check each individual tank, which I don't know if it was like that on the original aircraft, which would have made it really tricky for the pilots if it was. How would they know, when to switch from one fuel tank to another? Unless they just waited until the fuel runs out and their engine starts sputtering. But maybe the real aircraft did have it and it's just not modeled. I was running pretty low on fuel with this flight. You can see the fuel gauge 2 gauges below the photograph. It's pretty low, so I'll definitely have to fill up before the next flight. Resetting some of my autopilot controls. And final steps, turning off the battery, exiting the aircraft, closing the canopy. And I'm going to do an exterior shot of the aircraft. And that'll be the end of the video. The A2A Aircraft Factory F4U Corsair. Pretty challenging to fly, very challenging to land and take off with. But fun all around. There's a lot of things you can do, a lot of challenges you can do with it on PilotEdge, and look forward to flying it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.